Now, the main point of what we are saying is this. We do have such a high priest who sat down at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in heaven, and who serves in the sanctuary, the true tabernacle set up by the Lord, not by a mere human being. Every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices, and so it was necessary for this one also to have something to offer. If he were on earth, he would not be a priest, for there were already priests who offer the gifts prescribed by the law. They serve at a sanctuary that is a copy and shadow of what is in heaven. This is why Moses was warned when he was about to build the tabernacle. See to it that you make everything according to the pattern shown to you on the mountain. But in fact, the ministry Jesus has received is as superior to theirs as the covenant of which he is mediator is superior to the old one, since the new covenant is established on better promises. For if there had been nothing wrong with that first covenant, no place would have been sought for another. But God found fault with the people and said, "The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with our ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they did not remain faithful to my covenant, and I turned away from them, declares the Lord. This is a covenant I will establish with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will write my laws in their minds and write them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, 'Know the Lord,' because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more. By calling this covenant new, he has made the first one obsolete, and what is obsolete and outdated will soon disappear." This is the word of the Lord.
Got an orange flashing. Oh, it is working. The best laid plans. To give you a moment to think whilst we're replacing the batteries, the first thing we will ask you is what you've already been thinking about from covenants. So you can be having a think about the old covenants from the Old Testament and what you've been thinking about. Perfect, thank you. So, as we've already established, you've been thinking about kind of the old covenants, the Old Testament covenants. Has anyone got kind of a thing that's struck them over the things that you've been looking at in the last few weeks? Resounding silence, yeah. Oh, okay, so there's a physical covenant with the rainbow. Yeah, we go right back to Noah.
The fact that God gave his gifts because he is great, not because the recipients were great.
Fabulous. Yeah. And actually it's on God's initiative, isn't it, each time? God establishes a covenant. It's God's initiative, not the people's initiative that leads the covenant. Anything else?
I think the fact that each covenant had a different, it was the same kind of covenant, but they had different accompanying things. So you had Abraham with the cutting the pieces of, wasn't it the sacrifice and the pot coming through the thing and all that kind of jazz, and then you had the Moses covenant and the David covenant. They were all done in slightly different ways. So God's variety is pretty impressive, certainly.
Yes, yeah. And I wonder if that's about meeting them where they are at that point and what they need at that point to establish that point at the covenant. And so, yeah, there's kind of that uniqueness to each one. And yet they all have undergirding the same values, don't they? The kind of the rules about this people living in a particular way. I'm going to tell you, because I think it fits in with this. I've spent about 3 weeks looking at Hebrews 8 thinking, do you know, whenever I come here, I feel like I get a really difficult reading. I reckon what you do is everyone sits down, allocates it out, and then says, should we ask Gina if she wants to preach on that? Thanks, whoever does the rota. For 3 weeks I've been sitting with it, and I'd kind of written a sermon, and with pondering it, I had a chat with Kinder. For those of you who don't know, Kinder's my husband, and I had a chat with him about it, and he emailed me something that he'd noticed, and all this stuff was mulling around. And I think if I told you all of that's been mulling around for 3 weeks, we could be here for about half a day. And then we were at the cinema on Thursday night. Was it Friday night? To see Disclosure Day, not that that matters. And in that, it suddenly fell into place. It was like, oh, that's the bit that I'm missing. And then, do you know, when I actually got a chance to work on that was at 7 o'clock this morning, because we were out all day yesterday in Leeds. We went to watch UB40 last night. They were great. For those of you of an age that know who UB40 are, they were amazing. But it meant that at 7 o'clock this morning, I was frantically, that last piece that had fallen into the puzzle, amending this. So I'm hoping it does now make sense. In my sleep-deprived state. But the reason I tell you that is because I'm going to beg to differ with right at the end of Hebrews 8, because it says the old covenant is obsolete. And I know what they mean, but I don't think it is, because I don't think we get the new covenant without the old covenant. We don't get the New Testament without the old. I wouldn't have got to Friday night and that jigsaw piece fitting in had I not done the work for 3 weeks before. We need the rules, the boundaries, those things set for us to then be able to be creative. So Jeremiah, which is quoted here, is different, and we're told in Hebrews 8 is superior to the previous covenants. Why? We don't get told that in Hebrews 8, but I would suggest because it's written on their hearts, not being taught. It would suggest that there is something instinctive about what's going on with this new covenant. In the old covenants, there are clear promises. In most of them, clear commands and expectations, and then clear consequences if those don't happen. There are rules set down that I would suggest show the values that God wants the people to live by. Do not murder shows the sanctity of life. Do not covet shows that God wants us to live in a reality of abundance, not lack. Even the detail about how they should worship, how the tabernacle should be formed, shows that there is something significant in and valuable in the detail. That we shouldn't just be careless about our worship. That worship matters, and therefore it is important that the detail is a priority. But what's interesting is it says in Hebrews 8 that actually the detail that they were given for the tabernacle is a forerunner of what is to come. Think about Jesus and the conversation with the Samaritan woman at the well, where he talks about the fact that you will worship in spirit and in truth. Suddenly the cold details of it must be this long and this high aren't important, because we will be worshipping in spirit and in truth. With the old covenants, there is a consequence, and that is guilt and shame and failure. And yet in Jeremiah we get told with the new covenant, the sins and the iniquities, the failures will be forgiven. Suddenly shame and guilt is replaced with forgiveness and healing and restoration. Why all the rules that we get in the Old Testament? But I think God is meeting the people where they're at, and at that point they need the clear-cut rules. There are people learning to be God's people, and so the rules are the building blocks into which they will grow. Now, the problem with rules is they're open to interpretation, aren't they? Has anyone here ever tried to learn Monopoly with somebody who already knows all the rules? Anyone? Or another board game, replace it. The only reason I say Monopoly is because that is something that is seared on my mind. It's a miracle we are actually married. Because when we were dating, Kinder taught me the rules of Monopoly. I then discovered he'd only told me certain rules of Monopoly, and that some of the rules that he taught me were clearly open to interpretation when applied by him as opposed to me. But there is also something, isn't there, that when you start playing Monopoly and you start sticking by all the rules, you then start to discover it's actually more complicated than just the rules. There's tactics, isn't there? There's strategy. There's thinking about what you should buy. I say that as if I know. I have never played Monopoly since. But it's more complicated than just the set of rules. And if you read the set of rules without anyone to show you how to play it, is this just me? Does it not just read like gobbledygook? One of the things we love to do is go to the board game cafe. Because you get out a game, and if you read the rules and it doesn't make sense, one of the lovely people there will come over and explain them to you and kind of demonstrate it with the board or whatever you're playing so that it makes sense. Rules on their own are fine, but there is something more that is usually needed for us to really fully enjoy something. This is a bit left field, but does anyone here watch Taskmaster on the TV? Yes, I've heard a yes. Yes! It's my favourite programme. For those of you that have never watched it, I would just say you can get two versions. You can get a version that is slightly sweary, and then you can get a child-friendly version. So depending on your sensitivities, you might want to watch one or the other. But with that, what happens, a group of comedians are given a task. And the task, they're all pointless and silly, and you watch them try to achieve the task. And Alex Horn, who is the person that sets the tasks and supervises them doing them, they will invariably go, so it says here I mustn't touch the balls with my hands. They might have to move the balls somewhere. Can I use something else? And he'll say, it's all in the task. All the rules are in the task. But the point is they want more. Those rules are okay, but they want more clarification. They want more detail. And so you will find people who will stick to the rules. Some people create their own rules. And there are others who will be incredibly creative in how they stick within the rules of that. One of the ones recently was to find a worm. And so one of them went out and did a bit of digging and found a worm. Somebody else found a mealworm. Somebody else went in and found a sweet worm, one of the sweetie worms. All perfectly valid within the rules, but completely different. The difficulty with rules is that we can each read them differently, but also they're very difficult to live by if we don't have examples. This was the jigsaw piece that fell in for me on Friday night. Jesus is the fulfillment of the new covenant because Jesus lives the covenant that is promised in Jeremiah. Jesus isn't just living by the rules. Jesus shows us the way to live with it written on our hearts. Think about the ways that Jesus upsets the very people that are the rule keepers at the time. How he interacts with people that he absolutely should not be interacting with. The sinners. Having a conversation recently at a cafe church where somebody said, what does that mean? When it says the sinners, and it's like it's a catch-all phrase. All the people that he shouldn't be speaking to, but Jesus does. Jesus touches people that are considered ritually unclean. His disciples break the rules by eating when others think they shouldn't. He heals on the Sabbath. Jesus seems to know that these set of rules are part of the story, but not the whole. Not surprisingly, Jesus goes beyond. It's the heart beyond the head. It's a bit like if I sold my car, the contract that's entered into is that that person can have my car. But if before they come and pick it up, I get it valeted and I make sure that it's been serviced and I replace the slightly balding tyre and I leave in there a charger lead and a little note about the quirk of how to open the back door and some chocolate. I could have just sold them the car. That would have fulfilled the contract and been within the rules. But by doing the other parts, I'm showing that I actually care about the person that I'm selling to. This new covenant is not written on stone tablets, but on hearts. It doesn't lead to the same guilt and failure, but restoration, not just in ourselves, but in others. Hebrews is written to a group of people who have been taught to keep the rules. But Jesus lives out a more complex reality, one that challenges the narrow rule-keeping narrative. Think about the rich ruler, the rich young ruler who comes to him and says, I have kept all the commands. And Jesus says, go and sell all that you have and give it to the poor. He's kept the rules, but there is something more from the heart. Jesus in Matthew 5 says, you have heard it said, but I say, and the things that he says are far more challenging than the rules that he quotes first. Jesus illustrates to us that the heart, the values, the very nature of God, of love, needs to be held within the framework of the rules, but is lived, rooted first in love and compassion. I think of the new covenant like this. God is saying, you have had all the rules that you need. You have all the monopoly rules that you need to play the game. And then God comes to us in the person of Jesus to show us what that looks like and what it costs. We're a people of the new covenant. Hooray! We don't have to be narrowed down by all those rules, though I think our foundation should be built on them. However, there is a cost. Jesus replaces all of the rules really into the commandment when he's asked, which is in fact him taking two parts from the Old Testament: love God and love your neighbour as yourself. Which seems much simpler, doesn't it, than loads, and they go through Leviticus. Anyone, when they read the whole Bible in a year, and suddenly you get to Leviticus. When does this end? Love God, love your neighbour as you love yourself. Great, simple. It's not easy though, is it? In fact, it's far more difficult. How many times have I said, I wish Jesus would have just said, do this? But Jesus does. He says, do this, love God, love your neighbour as you love yourself. And then Jesus at the Last Supper takes wine. And depending on what translation you use, this is my blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for many. Or in the same way, after the supper, he took cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." With the Old Testament covenants, we touched on it earlier, there are sacrifices made, aren't there, to seal the covenant. This covenant is sealed with Jesus' blood. It's sealed with a cost that goes beyond sacrificing something else, but sacrificing self. I would suggest that as people of the new covenant, our call is to be self-sacrificial, to put aside our egos, to be aware when we're feeling defensive, angry, wanting to lash out because we are feeling perhaps discomforted or uncomfortable or like our needs aren't being met. How do we root ourselves in the love? How do we root ourselves and write on our heart the invitation to act out of love and compassion? Jesus shows us by how he lives and what he teaches what the new covenant looks like, but he also shows us and lives the cost. He gives his life for the new covenant. I want to give you a couple of minutes. I know for some of us, we're external processors, so you may be delighted to hear me say you might want to talk to a couple of people around you about this. You may equally be somebody that does not want to talk to another soul, in which case that is absolutely fine. You may find it helpful to sit and think about this on your own. But I invite you to think about the rules and consequences and what part do rules play in your Christian life? Where is there a balance between clear rules, what is and isn't acceptable, and what to do based on love and the values of love? Maybe a heart sense. Or perhaps you want to think about, do you think that we live in the reality of the new covenant? Do we really embrace the truth that we are fully forgiven people and that we are called to sacrificial love? Or maybe there's something else that struck you that you just need to get out there and talk about or quietly pray about. So I just want to offer you a few minutes to have a chat with those around you. What strikes you? Is it the kind of rule-based balance between that and heart sense? Is there something about living in the reality, the truth of the forgiven new covenant, or something else? So I appreciate that's quite a short length of time to probably talk about something that's quite complicated. Maybe you want to carry on talking about it over a coffee at the end. I don't know if anyone has anything kind of that they want to share, kind of a one-liner that they want to share. Or maybe it's kind of just been helpful to talk with others. No, that's great. I just want to leave you with something that all felt very heady and cerebral and quite complicated. And whilst I was working on this, this came out of my Bible. And I thought, well, this is the best way to finish, really. And it's really, well, again, it's really simple, but not easy. Good old St. Clare of Assisi. And this little postcard that's in my Bible. Love God, serve God. Everything is in that. Probably just said that saved us 20 minutes, couldn't I? Love God, serve God. Everything is in that.